Blood doesn't pool. It spreads. Slowly, deliberately, like it's searching for something. That's what caught her attention first. Not the screaming, not the chaos of another Saturday night in the ER, but the way the blood moved across those white tiles, thick and dark, trailing from a man who shouldn't have been alive. His wounds were too clean, too precise. 3 entry points, minimal tearing. Whoever shot him knew exactly where to aim. And when his eyes found hers through the mass of bodies and noise, his lips formed 2 words that made her blood run colder than his. Hide it. Sarah Callahan had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous moments don't announce themselves with sirens. They whisper. Before we dive in, if you're here for the whole story, stay until the end. Like this video and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far these stories travel. Now, let's get into it. The thing about being invisible is that people forget you're even in the room. Sarah had gotten used to it at Riverside General. 4 months into her contract, and she'd already learned the hierarchy. Doctors spoke, senior nurses nodded, and people like her, the floaters, the temps, the bodies hired to fill gaps, kept their mouths shut and their heads down. It didn't matter that she had a decade of experience. It didn't matter that she'd worked in places where a wrong decision could cost lives in seconds, not hours. Here, she was just another set of hands. Callahan, I need vitals on bed 7, now. The charge nurse didn't even look up from her tablet. Kelly Brennan, mid-40s, permanent scowl, the kind of person who treated efficiency like a personal religion. She'd made it clear from day one that Sarah was here to work, not to think. Sarah grabbed the blood pressure cuff without a word and headed toward the bay. Saturday nights in downtown Portland brought out the worst. The overdoses, the stabbings, the car wrecks. Riverside General sat 4 blocks from the waterfront, right where the city's polished surface cracked open to reveal everything underneath. Gang violence, homeless camps, the kind of poverty that didn't make the news unless someone died spectacularly. Bed 7 was a middle-aged man with a broken arm, drunk and belligerent. He swatted at her when she tried to wrap the cuff around his bicep. Get off me, he slurred. Sir, I need to check your blood pressure. I said get off. She stepped back, calm, not offended. She'd dealt with worse. I'll come back in 5. Yeah, you do that, sweetheart. She walked away before Kelly could snap at her for not finishing. There was no point arguing. People like that man, and people like Kelly, had already decided who Sarah was. Quiet, forgettable, soft. They had no idea. The ER was a wall of sound tonight. Monitors beeping, people shouting, a kid wailing somewhere near triage. Sarah moved through it like water, automatic, her body knowing the rhythm even when her mind drifted. She restocked gauze in Bay 3. She logged medications. She avoided eye contact with Dr. Raymond Forster, the attending who'd told her last week that nurses should focus on nursing when she'd suggested a patient might be having a reaction to a new antibiotic. He'd been wrong. The patient had seized an hour later. No one apologized. That was the thing about this place. It didn't matter if you were right. It mattered if you had the title to back it up. Sarah was refilling an IV bag when the doors burst open. 2 men stumbled in, half carrying a third between them. The man in the middle was barely conscious, head lolling, feet dragging. His shirt was soaked through with blood, not the bright red of a fresh wound, but the deep, almost black color of something that had been bleeding for a while. "We need help!" one of them shouted. Kelly was already moving, her voice sharp and clipped. "Get him to Bay 1. Callahan, trauma kit, now!" Sarah's body moved before her brain caught up. She grabbed the kit from the supply room and sprinted toward Bay 1, weaving through the chaos. By the time she got there, they'd already laid him on the gurney. His eyes were half open, glassy, his breathing shallow and uneven. Kelly was cutting away his shirt. That's when Sarah saw the wounds. 3 of them. 2 in the upper chest, 1 just below the ribs. Clean entry points. No powder burns. No tearing. Whoever shot this man had done it from a distance, and they'd known what they were doing. Her hand stilled for half a second. She'd seen wounds like this before. Not here. Not in a civilian hospital. "Callahan, I need that kit." Sarah snapped back, handed it over. Kelly was already barking orders, fluids, oxygen, pressure on the wounds. Dr. Forster appeared, looking annoyed, like they'd interrupted his coffee break. "What do we have?" "GSW, multiple entry points. BP's dropping fast." Forster leaned over the patient, frowning. Get a chest x-ray, and someone page surgery. Sarah moved to adjust the oxygen mask, and that's when the man's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, but his eyes, suddenly horribly focused, locked onto hers. "Hide it," he whispered. Sarah froze. "What?" she breathed. His fingers tightened. "Don't let them take it." "Callahan, what the hell are you doing?" Kelly snapped. "Let go of him and get the IV started." But Sarah couldn't move. The man's eyes were burning into hers, desperate, pleading. His lips moved again, barely audible over the noise. "Front pocket." Then his hand went limp. The monitors screamed. "He's crashing!" Kelly shoved Sarah aside, and suddenly the bay was a blur of motion, compressions, medications, Forster shouting orders that barely cut through the noise. Sarah stumbled back, her wrist still tingling where the man had grabbed her. "Hide it." She glanced down. His jacket had fallen open when Kelly cut away his shirt. The front pocket was unzipped. And inside, just barely visible, was the edge of something small and black. A USB drive. Sarah's pulse spiked. She looked around. Everyone was focused on the man, on the monitors, on keeping him alive. No one was watching her. Her hand moved on instinct. She slipped the drive out of his pocket and into hers in one smooth motion, so fast she barely registered doing it. Then she stepped back, heart hammering, and forced herself to breathe. "Clear!" The man's body jerked as the defibrillator fired. Nothing. Again! Another jolt, another flatline. Forster exhaled, glancing at the clock. Time of death, 22:17. Kelly swore under her breath. The other nurses stepped back, defeated, exhausted. Sarah stood frozen at the edge of the bay, the weight of the drive burning a hole in her scrubs. What the hell did I just do? She didn't have time to answer. The ER doors exploded open. 4 men strode in, moving with the kind of authority that made people step aside without thinking. They wore dark suits, earpieces, expressions carved from stone. The one in front flashed a badge too quickly for anyone to read it. "Federal agents," he announced. "We're taking custody of the body and any personal effects." Kelly blinked. "Excuse me?" "The patient, any belongings, all medical records, we'll need them immediately." Forster stepped forward, frowning. "You can't just—" "This is a matter of national security, Doctor." The man's voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. "We have jurisdiction. You can cooperate, or we can make this difficult." Sarah's stomach dropped. She watched the way they moved, confident, coordinated, but something was off. Their suits were too tight in the shoulders. Their earpieces were wrong, civilian models, not government issue. And the way the leader held himself, the way his eyes scanned the room, he wasn't looking for threats. He was looking for witnesses. Kelly crossed her arms. "I need to see proper identification." The man's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I don't have time." "Then make time." For a moment, Sarah thought Kelly might actually win, but then the man smiled, and it was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course. He reached into his jacket, and Sarah saw the gun, not holstered like it should be, loose, ready. Her pulse exploded. These aren't agents. She took a step back, slow, casual, trying not to draw attention. Her mind was already running through exits, cover points, angles. Old instincts she'd buried years ago were clawing their way to the surface. The man pulled out his badge again, holding it up for Kelly to inspect. She leaned in, squinting. "This doesn't look—" The lights went out. The entire ER plunged into darkness. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but stunned silence. Then the screaming started. Gunfire erupted, sharp, deafening cracks that split the air like thunder. Muzzle flashes lit up the room in strobe light bursts. People scattered, diving behind gurneys, scrambling for cover. Kelly hit the floor. Forster bolted for the exit. Sarah didn't run. She dropped low, moving fast and silent toward the nearest supply cart. Her hands found a scalpel, a pair of trauma shears, anything she could use. Her breathing slowed. Her vision sharpened. 3 shooters. Front entrance, 40 feet. Someone screamed. A nurse, young, maybe mid-20s, was frozen in the middle of the bay, hands over her head. One of the shooters turned toward her. Sarah moved. She grabbed a metal tray from the cart and hurled it across the room. It clattered against the wall, loud and sudden, and the shooter spun toward the noise. Sarah was already moving the other direction, grabbing the frozen nurse and yanking her down behind a gurney. "Stay low," Sarah hissed. "Don't move." The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. Sarah's mind was racing. They're here for the drive. They know he had it. They're going to search everyone. She couldn't let them find it. Another burst of gunfire, closer this time. The emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in dim red. Sarah could see them now, 4 men moving through the ER in a coordinated sweep. They weren't shooting randomly. They were corralling people, forcing them into groups. This wasn't panic. This was a cleanup. Sarah's hand went to her pocket, feeling the outline of the drive. Hide it. But where? The supply cart was too obvious. The lockers were too far. She needed somewhere they wouldn't think to look, somewhere. Her eyes landed on the crash cart. She moved fast, crawling on her stomach toward it. The defibrillator was still out, pads hanging loose. She grabbed the device, popped open the back panel, and wedged the drive inside, snapping it shut just as Boots appeared in her peripheral vision. "Everyone on the floor, hands where I can see them." Sarah flattened herself, palms out. One of the men walked past her, so close she could smell gun oil and sweat. He was scanning faces, checking pockets, looking for something, not someone, something. They didn't find it. After what felt like an eternity, the man moved on. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. But it wasn't over. The leader, the one who'd flashed the fake badge, stood in the center of the ER, gun lowered but ready. His voice carried over the whimpering and the distant wail of sirens. "We're looking for a data device. Small, black, USB drive." He paused, letting that sink in. "Whoever has it, hand it over now. No one else has to get hurt." Silence. Sarah stayed perfectly still, her cheek pressed against the cold tile. The man sighed. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way." He nodded to his team. They started searching. Pockets. Bags. Supply carts. They moved methodically, efficiently, like they'd done this before. Sarah's pulse hammered. The crash cart was only 10 feet away. If they opened it, if they found the drive. "Sir?" One of the men was crouched next to the dead patient's gurney, checking the pockets Sarah had already emptied. "Nothing," he reported. The leader's expression darkened. "Then someone in this room has it." He raised his gun. Last chance. Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't let them start executing people. But if she gave up the drive, the man had died for nothing, and whatever was on it, whatever was worth killing for, would disappear. She had to move. But before she could, another voice cut through the tension. "I have it!" Everyone turned. Dr. Forster was standing near the triage desk, hands raised, face pale. He was holding something small and black. A flash drive. Sarah's breath caught. "That's not the right one." The leader walked toward Forster, slow and deliberate. He took the drive, inspected it, then slipped it into his pocket. "Thank you, doctor." Then he shot him. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Forster crumpled, blood spreading across his white coat. Screams erupted. People scrambled backward, pressing against walls, trying to become invisible. Sarah's jaw clenched. These men aren't leaving witnesses. The leader turned back to the room, his voice calm. "Anyone else?" No one moved. He smiled. "Good." Then the front windows exploded. Glass shattered inward as black SUVs screeched to a halt outside. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear poured out, real agents this time, with real weapons and real authority. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." The shooters scattered. Gunfire erupted again, louder, faster. The ER turned into a war zone. Sarah grabbed the nearest person, a tech, barely out of his teens, and dragged him toward the back corridor. "Move!" she shouted. They ran. Behind them, the firefight raged. Bullets punched through drywall. Someone was screaming. The air smelled like cordite and blood. Sarah's instincts took over completely now. She moved like she was back in Kandahar, back in Mosul, back in places where hesitation meant death. She cleared corners. She checked sight lines. She kept moving. The tech stumbled. Sarah caught him, hauled him upright. "Keep going!" They burst through a fire door into the stairwell. Sarah slammed it shut behind them, her chest heaving. For a moment, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing, then footsteps, heavy, fast, coming up the stairs. Sarah's eyes darted around. They were on the second floor. No exits. Nowhere to hide. The footsteps were getting closer. She grabbed the tech's shoulders, looked him dead in the eye. When I say run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Understand? He nodded, terrified. The door below them crashed open. Sarah didn't wait. She shoved the tech toward the next flight of stairs and turned to face whoever was coming. A man appeared on the landing below, one of the shooters. He raised his gun. Sarah was faster. She launched herself down the stairs, inside his firing arc before he could adjust. Her hand caught his wrist, twisted, hard. The gun went off, the shot ricocheting off concrete. She drove her elbow into his throat, felt cartilage crunch, then ripped the weapon from his grip and slammed the butt into his temple. He dropped. Sarah stood over him, breathing hard, the gun heavy in her hand. The tech was staring at her from the top of the stairs, eyes wide. "What?" he whispered. "What are you?" Sarah didn't answer. She just turned and started climbing. They made it to the 4th floor before the alarms started blaring. Lockdown. The hospital was sealing itself off, trapping everyone inside, including the shooters. Sarah's mind raced. She needed to get to the crash cart, retrieve the drive, and get out. But the ER was a war zone, and the hospital was locked down. She was trapped. The tech was shaking. "We're going to die, aren't we?" Sarah looked at him, saw the fear, the helplessness. She'd seen that look before, on soldiers, on civilians, on people who'd given up. She wasn't going to let that happen here. "No," she said quietly. "We're not." She checked the gun, half a magazine. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. We're getting out of here." The tech nodded, still terrified, but something in her voice made him believe. They moved through the 4th floor, staying low, staying quiet. Sarah's training was fully awake now, muscle memory from another life. Another version of herself she'd tried to bury. But you don't bury war. You just carry it. They reached a service elevator. Sarah hit the button. Nothing. Lockdown. She swore under her breath. The tech pointed to a door at the end of the hall. "Maintenance access. It leads to the old wing." Sarah nodded. "Show me." They ran. Behind them, somewhere in the building, gunfire echoed. Shouts. Breaking glass. The hospital was tearing itself apart. Sarah kicked open the maintenance door. Inside was a narrow corridor, dimly lit, lined with pipes and electrical conduits. It smelled like rust and old concrete. They moved fast, the tech leading. Sarah kept the gun up, scanning behind them. "How do you know where you're going?" she asked. "I used to smoke up here," he admitted, before they cracked down. Sarah almost smiled. They emerged into the old wing, a section of the hospital that had been closed for renovations. Empty rooms, plastic sheeting, construction equipment, and quiet. Too quiet. Sarah's instincts screamed. She grabbed the tech, pulled him into a darkened room just as footsteps echoed down the hall. 2 men, moving fast, searching. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, gun ready. The tech held his breath. The footsteps passed, kept going. Sarah waited 30 seconds, then peered out. Clear. "Come on." They moved deeper into the old wing, looking for a way out. But every exit was sealed, every window barred. They were running out of options. And then Sarah heard it. A helicopter. She rushed to the nearest window, looked up. 2 black choppers circled the hospital, searchlights cutting through the night. But these weren't police. The markings were military. Sarah's blood ran cold. What the hell was on that drive? The tech was panicking now. "We're surrounded. There's no way out." Sarah turned to him, her mind racing through possibilities. Then she looked up. Yes, there is. The roof. They found a service ladder tucked behind a sheet of plastic. Sarah tested it. Stable. "Climb," she ordered. The tech went first. Sarah followed, the gun tucked into her waistband. The ladder led up through a maintenance shaft, then out onto a narrow access platform. From there, they could see the roof access door. Locked. Sarah didn't hesitate. She aimed the gun and fired twice. The lock shattered. They burst onto the roof. The wind hit them immediately, cold and sharp. The city sprawled below, lights glittering. The helicopters were closer now, their rotors deafening. Sarah looked around. No exits, no fire escapes. They were trapped. The roof access door slammed open behind them. The leader stepped out, gun raised, his expression calm. End of the line, he said. Sarah pushed the tech behind her. The man smiled. You've caused me a lot of trouble, nurse. Where's the drive? Gone, Sarah lied. I don't believe you. He took a step closer. I'm going to search you, and if I find it, I'll make this quick. If I don't, he shrugged. Well, long fall. Sarah's hand inched toward the gun at her waist. The man saw it. Don't. She froze. He walked closer, eyes locked on hers, and then the sky exploded with light. The helicopters descended, fast and hard. Ropes dropped. Figures in tactical gear rappelled down, moving with military precision. The leader spun, surprised. Sarah didn't give him a chance. She drew the gun and fired. He went down. The roof erupted into chaos. The tactical team secured the perimeter in seconds, weapons trained on every angle. A woman in full combat gear approached Sarah, lowering her rifle. Are you Sarah Callahan? Sarah blinked, breathless. Yes. The woman's expression softened, just barely. Captain Reeves, we've been looking for you. For me? Reeves glanced at the dead man on the ground, then back at Sarah. The patient you tried to save. Lieutenant Marcus Hendricks, he was one of ours. Sarah's world tilted. He was carrying classified intel, evidence of a black site operation, names, transactions, everything. Reeves paused. He transmitted a final message before he died, said a nurse named Sarah Callahan had the drive. Sarah's hand went to her pocket, empty. I hit it, she said. Crash cart, ER. Reeves nodded to one of her team. He spoke into his radio. Then Reeves looked at Sarah again, studying her. You served. It wasn't a question. Sarah hesitated. A long time ago. Where? Iraq. Afghanistan. I was a combat medic. Reeves' expression shifted. Respect. Recognition. That explains a lot. She gestured to the edge of the roof, where the city stretched out below them. You just took down 4 contractors and saved a dozen lives. Most people would have frozen. Sarah didn't respond. Reeves' radio crackled. Captain, we've secured the drive. Relief flooded through Sarah so fast she almost staggered. Good, Reeves said. Then, to Sarah. You're coming with us. We need your statement, and she glanced at the bodies, the blood, the chaos. You're going to need protection. The people behind this don't leave loose ends. Sarah looked at the tech, still shaking but alive. Looked at the tactical team, efficient and lethal. Looked at the city below, glittering and indifferent. And she realized something. She wasn't invisible anymore. The helicopter ride was loud enough that Sarah didn't have to talk. She sat strapped into the jump seat, the city shrinking below her, the rotors pounding a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The tech, his name was Jordan, she'd learned, sat across from her, wrapped in a thermal blanket, staring at nothing. Captain Reeves was on the radio, her voice clipped and professional, coordinating with someone on the ground. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold window and tried to process what had just happened. An hour ago, she'd been checking vitals on drunk patients. Now she was in a military helicopter, flying over Portland with a tactical team, holding information that people had killed for. Her hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists, willing them to stop. Old habits. Old training. But it had been 6 years since she'd left the service. 6 years since she'd promised herself she'd never go back to that version of who she was. And yet here she was. The helicopter banked hard, and Sarah caught a glimpse of Riverside General below. Police lights strobed the parking lot. News vans were already setting up. She could see bodies being carried out on stretchers, survivors huddled under blankets, the ER entrance cordoned off with yellow tape. How many had died? She didn't want to know. Reeves finished her call and turned to Sarah. We're taking you to a secure location, federal building downtown. You'll give your statement there, and we'll keep you under protection until we figure out who else is involved. Involved in what? Sarah's voice came out rougher than she intended. You don't know? I know a man died trying to protect that drive. I know people showed up pretending to be federal agents and started shooting. That's it. Reeves studied her for a moment, then nodded. Lieutenant Hendricks was working undercover. He'd infiltrated a private military contractor called Obsidian Solutions. They'd been running black site operations, illegal detentions, off-book interrogations, arms deals, all under the radar, all funded by people who don't want their names attached. Sarah's stomach twisted. And the drive. Names, financial records, proof. Reeves paused. Enough to bring down a lot of very powerful people. So they sent a hit squad to clean it up. They sent 4. We stopped this one, but there will be others. Sarah looked out the window again. The city lights blurred together. Why tell me this? Because you're a witness, and because the moment that drive goes public, everyone's going to want to know who saved it. Reeves leaned forward. You need to understand what you're walking into. Sarah met her eyes. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does. The helicopter descended toward a rooftop landing pad on the federal building, a glass and steel tower in the heart of downtown. They touched down hard, and the side door slid open. 2 agents in suits were waiting, along with a woman in a charcoal blazer who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Reeves jumped out first, then turned to help Sarah down. Jordan followed, still wrapped in his blanket, looking lost. The woman in the blazer approached. I'm Agent Diane Ortega, FBI. We need to debrief you immediately. Sarah nodded, too tired to argue. They were escorted inside through a maze of hallways and security checkpoints into a conference room with no windows and fluorescent lights that hummed. A table. 4 chairs. A camera in the corner. Ortega gestured for Sarah to sit. Reeves stayed by the door. This will be recorded, Ortega said, setting a digital recorder on the table. For your protection as much as ours. Fine. Ortega hit record. State your name and occupation. Sarah Callahan, registered nurse. How long have you been working at Riverside General? 4 months? And before that? Sarah hesitated. I was a travel nurse. Contracts in Seattle, San Francisco, a few smaller hospitals. And before that? Sarah's jaw tightened. Army, combat medic. Ortega didn't react, but Sarah saw the flicker of interest in her eyes. How long did you serve? 8 years. Deployments? Iraq. Afghanistan. 2 tours each. Honorable discharge? Yes. Ortega made a note. Walk me through what happened tonight. Sarah did. She kept it factual, stripped of emotion, the patient, the wounds, the whispered warning, hiding the drive, the fake agents, the shootout, the escape. When she finished, Ortega leaned back in her chair. You took down an armed contractor in a stairwell. No weapon, just your hands. He wasn't expecting it. Most people would have run. I did run, just not away. Ortega almost smiled. Lieutenant Hendricks chose well. He didn't choose me. I was just there. Maybe. Ortega tapped her pen against the table. But you're the reason we have that drive. You understand what that means? Sarah didn't answer. It means you're a hero. It also means you're a target. The word landed like a punch. Ortega leaned forward. The people behind Obsidian Solutions have resources. Money. Connections. They will try to discredit you. They will try to silence you. And if that doesn't work, they will try to kill you. Sarah's throat went dry. We can protect you, Ortega continued. But you need to cooperate fully. No holding back. No secrets. I'm not holding anything back. Good. Ortega stood. Get some rest. We'll have more questions in the morning. She left. Reeves waited until the door closed, then crossed the room and sat down across from Sarah. You okay? Sarah laughed bitterly. Define okay. Fair point. Reeves paused. You handled yourself well tonight. I got lucky. Luck doesn't disarm a trained contractor. Sarah didn't respond. Reeves studied her for a long moment. Why'd you leave the Army? That's in my file. I'm not asking your file, I'm asking you. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. I got tired of watching people die. So you became a nurse? I became a nurse because I wanted to save people without having to shoot anyone first. Sarah's voice was flat. Didn't work out. Reeves didn't push. She just nodded, stood, and walked to the door. There's a cot in the next room. Try to get some sleep. I won't. I know. Reeves left. Sarah sat alone in this conference room, the hum of the fluorescent lights drilling into her skull. She stared at the camera in the corner, at the recorder still sitting on the table, and wondered how her life had gone from invisible to this in the span of 4 hours. She didn't sleep. By morning, the news had broken. Sarah watched it on a small TV in the break room. CNN, Fox, local channels, all running the same story. Mass shooting at Riverside General. Multiple casualties, unidentified gunmen, federal response. The hospital was still locked down, patients and staff being questioned, and then her name appeared on the screen. Sarah Callahan, a nurse at the hospital, is being credited with saving multiple lives during the attack. Sarah's stomach dropped. The footage cut to a reporter standing outside the federal building. Sources say Callahan, a former Army combat medic, played a critical role in protecting classified information that may be connected to the shooting. Federal authorities have not confirmed these reports, but Sarah turned off the TV. Ortega appeared in the doorway. "You've seen it." "Hard to miss. It's going to get worse. We're holding a press conference this afternoon. You don't have to be there, but it might help to put a face to the story. Or paint a bigger target on my back." Ortega didn't deny it. Sarah rubbed her eyes. "What happens to the drive?" "It's being analyzed. Once we verify the contents, it goes to the DOJ. Then the arrests start." "How long?" "Days, maybe a week. And until then, you stay here, under protection." Sarah looked around the break room, stale coffee, flickering lights, air that smelled like recycled everything. "I can't just sit here." "You don't have a choice." But she did. That afternoon, Sarah made a decision. She walked into Ortega's office without knocking. The agent looked up, surprised. "I want to go back to the hospital." Ortega blinked. "Absolutely not. People died there. My co-workers. You need to stay alive." Ortega's voice was sharp. "The second you step outside this building, you're exposed." "I'm exposed anyway. You said it yourself. My name's already out there." "Which is exactly why you need to stay put." Sarah crossed her arms. "I'm not asking for permission." Ortega stood, her expression hardening. "Ms. Callahan, you are a material witness in an ongoing federal investigation. I can keep you here if I need to." "Then do it. Arrest me, because otherwise I'm leaving." They stared at each other. Finally, Ortega exhaled. "Why?" "Because I need to see it." Sarah's voice cracked, just barely. "I need to see what happened, who survived, who didn't." Ortega was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. "Reeves, get a team ready. We're taking Callahan to Riverside." An hour later, Sarah was back in a convoy. 2 black SUVs, agents front and back, Reeves sitting beside her. They drove through downtown Portland in silence, and Sarah watched the city pass by like she was seeing it for the first time. Riverside General looked like a war zone. The windows were shattered. The entrance was barricaded. Police tape fluttered in the wind. News crews lined the street, cameras trained on the building like vultures. The convoy pulled into the back entrance, away from the cameras. Reeves led Sarah inside, through hallways she'd walked 1,000 times but now felt alien. The walls were pocked with bullet holes. Blood stained the floors. The air smelled like disinfectant and something darker. They reached the ER. Sarah stopped in the doorway. It was worse than she'd imagined. Gurneys overturned. Equipment destroyed. The bay where Lieutenant Hendricks had died was still cordoned off, dried blood marking the spot. She could see the outline of Dr. Forster's body chalked on the floor near triage. Her chest tightened. "Sarah." She turned. Kelly Brennan was standing near the nurse's station, her arm in a sling, her face pale. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "You're alive," Kelly said, and there was something in her voice Sarah had never heard before. Relief. Sarah walked over slowly. "Are you okay?" "I got hit in the shoulder. They said I was lucky." Kelly's eyes were red-rimmed. "You saved Jordan. He told us. You got him out." Sarah didn't know what to say. Kelly looked down at her hands. "I was wrong about you." Sarah blinked. "What?" "I thought you were just another temp, someone who'd be gone in 6 months." Kelly's voice shook. "I didn't see you. I didn't listen. And last night, you were the only one who knew what to do." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. "I'm sorry," Kelly whispered. Sarah swallowed hard. "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do." Kelly met her eyes. "Dr. Forster's dead because I froze, because I didn't know how to handle it. But you did." Sarah didn't have words. Kelly wiped her eyes. They're saying you're a hero. They're right. Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut through the room. Well, isn't this touching? Sarah turned. A man in an expensive suit stood near the entrance, flanked by two lawyers. Mid-50s, silver hair, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like money and power rolled into one. Reeves stepped forward. This is a restricted area. The man ignored her, focusing on Sarah. Ms. Callahan, my name is Richard Vance. I represent the ownership group of Riverside General. Sarah's blood went cold. I wanted to speak with you personally, Vance continued, his tone smooth, to express our deepest gratitude for your actions last night. You showed extraordinary courage. Sarah didn't move. Vance smiled wider. We'd like to offer you a permanent position, full benefits, significant raise, and of course, a formal commendation. Why? Sarah's voice was flat. Because you deserve it. Or because you want to control the narrative. Vance's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. I'm not sure I understand. Sarah stepped closer. You're worried I'm going to talk about how understaffed we were, about how the security protocols failed, about how 4 armed men walked into your ER and no one stopped them. Vance's jaw tightened. Ms. Callahan, I think you're under a great deal of stress. I think you're trying to buy my silence. The room went silent. Vance's lawyers shifted uncomfortably. Reeves watched, hand near her weapon. Vance's smile finally dropped. You're making a mistake. No, Sarah said quietly. I'm just not making yours. Vance stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his lawyers. We're done here. They left. Reeves exhaled. That was stupid. Probably. You just made an enemy. I've made worse. Kelly was staring at Sarah like she'd grown a second head. Do you have any idea who that was? Someone who thinks money fixes everything. He's connected to the governor, to the city council. He owns half of downtown. Sarah shrugged. Good for him. Kelly shook her head, almost laughing. You're insane. Maybe. But before Sarah could say anything else, Reeves' radio crackled. Captain, we have a situation. Reeves' expression went cold. What kind? Media's outside. They know Callahan's here. Sarah's stomach dropped. Reeves grabbed her arm. We need to move. Now. They rushed through the back corridors, but it was too late. By the time they reached the exit, the news crews had surrounded the building. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Reeves swore. Stay behind me. They pushed through the crowd, agents forming a barrier, but the voices were relentless. Ms. Callahan, is it true you're a witness? Did you see who shot Dr. Forster? Are you working with the FBI? Sarah kept her head down, but then one voice cut through the rest. Is it true you're a veteran? She stopped. Reeves grabbed her arm. Don't. But Sarah turned. The reporter was young, maybe late 20s, holding a microphone with a local news logo. Her eyes were sharp. Did you serve? The reporter asked again. Sarah hesitated, then she nodded. The cameras surged forward. What branch? Army. Where did you deploy? Iraq. Afghanistan. The reporter's expression shifted. And you used that training to save lives last night? Sarah's throat tightened. I did what anyone would have done. That's not true, though, is it? The reporter's voice was softer now. Most people would have run. You didn't. Sarah didn't answer. Why? Sarah looked at the cameras, at the reporters, at the strangers waiting for her to say something profound, something heroic. But all she felt was tired. Because no one else was going to, she said finally. The words hung in the air. Then Reeves pulled her away, and they were back in the SUV, speeding toward the federal building. Sarah leaned her head against the window, her reflection staring back at her. She'd just painted the biggest target on her back yet. That night, the story exploded. Every major network ran it. Veteran nurse stops hospital massacre. Former combat medic saves lives. The footage of Sarah's brief interview played on loop, dissected by pundits and commentators. Some called her a hero. Others questioned why a highly trained soldier was working as a low-level nurse. And some, the ones that made Sarah's skin crawl, started digging into her past. Ortega showed her the headlines the next morning. Sarah Callahan, from battlefield to ER. The nurse who wouldn't run. Military training saves dozens in Portland shooting. Sarah pushed the tablet away. I didn't ask for this. Doesn't matter. You're the story now. Ortega paused. And it's going to get worse. How? Ortega pulled up another article. This one was from a conservative blog, the kind that thrived on conspiracy theories. The headline read, Was Portland shooting a false flag? Questions surround hero nurse. Sarah's blood ran cold. The article questioned her military record, suggested she might have been working with the attackers, implied the whole thing was staged. It was insane. It was also gaining traction. They're trying to discredit you, Ortega said, before the drive goes public, before you can testify. Who's they? We're working on it. Ortega closed the tablet. But you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. She was right. Over the next 48 hours, the attacks came from every direction. Anonymous social media accounts claimed Sarah had a history of violence, that she'd been discharged for misconduct, that she was mentally unstable. None of it was true, but the damage was done. Sarah watched it happen in real time. Her name, her face, her life dissected by strangers who didn't know her and didn't care. Comment sections filled with vitriol. Think pieces questioned her motives. Even some of the staff from Riverside, people she'd worked alongside, gave interviews suggesting she'd always been off. Kelly wasn't one of them, but plenty of others were. Sarah stopped reading after the third day. Ortega found her in the break room, staring at a cup of cold coffee. The DOJ's almost done with the analysis, Ortega said. Once they verify everything, they'll move fast. And then what? Then you testify. Then people go to prison. Sarah looked up. Will it stop? Will what stop? This. Sarah gestured vaguely. The lies, the attacks. Ortega was quiet for a moment. Eventually. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Sarah nodded slowly. She'd expected as much. That night, alone in her temporary quarters, Sarah stared at the ceiling and tried to remember why she'd left the army in the first place. She'd been so sure back then, so certain that she wanted a quiet life, a normal life. But maybe there was no such thing. Maybe some people were just built for war. The thought should have scared her. It didn't. The next morning, Ortega called an emergency meeting. Sarah, Reeves, and 2 federal prosecutors gathered in the conference room. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Marks, laid out a folder on the table. The drive's been verified, Marks said. Everything Hendricks claimed is there. Financial records, communications, contracts. We have enough to bring charges against 14 individuals, including 3 sitting members of Congress and the CEO of Obsidian Solutions. Sarah's pulse quickened. Arrests start tomorrow, Marks continued, but we need your testimony to make it stick. You're the chain of custody. You're the one who protected the evidence. What do you need me to do? Tell the truth. Exactly what happened. No embellishments, no drama, just the facts. Sarah nodded. Marks leaned forward. There's something else. The CEO of Obsidian. His name is Marcus Toland. He's already lawyered up, and his legal team is planning to go after you. How? They're going to argue you tampered with the drive, that you planted evidence, that you're unstable. Marks paused. They're going to try to destroy your credibility before you ever take the stand. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Can they do that? They'll try. Whether they succeed depends on how well you hold up under cross-examination. Sarah met her eyes. I'll hold up? Mark studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good, because if you break, they all walk. The meeting ended. Reeves walked Sarah back to her quarters. You don't have to do this, Reeves said quietly. Yes, I do. No one would blame you if you walked away. Sarah stopped. I would, Reeves sighed. You're stubborn. I've been told. They reached the door. Reeves hesitated, then said, For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Sarah almost smiled. Thanks. But as Reeves walked away, Sarah felt the weight of what was coming settle over her like a shroud. Tomorrow, the arrests would start, and the real war would begin. She went to bed that night expecting nightmares. Instead, she dreamed of Lieutenant Hendricks. He was sitting in the ER, alive, unbloodied, looking at her with those desperate eyes. You did it, he said. Sarah shook her head. I didn't do anything. You did everything. She woke up before dawn, her heart pounding. The arrest started at 6 a.m. Sarah watched the news coverage from the conference room. Federal agents executing warrants across 3 states. Executives dragged out of their homes in handcuffs. Senators giving hurried statements. The CEO of Obsidian Solutions, Marcus Toland, arrested on the tarmac of a private airfield, suitcase in hand. He'd been trying to run. Ortega stood beside Sarah, arms crossed. It's happening. Sarah couldn't look away from the screen. Toland's face filled the frame, mid-60s, silver hair, the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. He looked shocked, furious. And then the camera caught something else. As the agents led him away, Toland turned and looked directly into the lens. He smiled. Sarah's blood turned to ice. He knows, she whispered. Ortega frowned. Knows what? Sarah pointed at the screen. He knows something we don't. Before Ortega could respond, her phone rang. She answered, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm in seconds. When? Ortega's voice was sharp. How bad? She hung up and turned to Sarah. There's been a leak. Sarah's stomach dropped. What kind of leak? Someone inside the investigation. They tipped off Toland's legal team. Ortega's jaw tightened. They know you're the key witness. They know where you are. And they know you're testifying. Sarah's pulse spiked. Are they coming? Ortega didn't answer. She didn't have to. The alarms started blaring. The alarms cut through the building like a scream. Sarah's training kicked in before her mind could catch up. She was moving toward the door when Reeves burst through it, weapon drawn, face locked in combat mode. We're evacuating now. How many? Sarah's voice was steady, despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Unknown. Buildings compromised. Reeves grabbed Sarah's arm. Stay close. They moved fast through the corridor, joined by 4 more agents, all armed, all scanning corners like they expected contact any second. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, red and dim, turning everything into a nightmare. Ortega's voice crackled over Reeves's radio. South stairwell is clear. Get her to the garage. Copy. They hit the stairwell at a run. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, but her breathing stayed controlled. 12 floors. The agents moved in formation, 2 ahead, 2 behind, Reeves at Sarah's shoulder. Their boots echoed off concrete. 6 floors down, gunfire erupted above them. Everyone froze. The sound was unmistakable. Automatic weapons, close, getting closer. Shouts. Return fire from the agents upstairs. Move! Reeves shoved Sarah forward. They descended faster, no longer caring about noise. 4 floors. 3. Sarah's legs burned, but she didn't slow down. Behind them, the stairwell door on the 8th floor crashed open. Heavy boots, multiple contacts. Contact rear! One of the agents shouted. Reeves didn't stop. Keep moving! They hit the garage level and burst through the door. The underground parking structure was dark, except for emergency strips along the floor. Rows of vehicles. Concrete pillars. Too many shadows. An SUV sat 30 feet away, engine already running. They sprinted toward it. Sarah saw the muzzle flash before she heard the shot. The agent to her left went down hard, blood spraying from his shoulder. Reeves returned fire without breaking stride, her shots echoing like thunder. Sarah dropped low, grabbed the wounded agent under his good arm, and half dragged him toward the SUV. Get in, Reeves screamed. More gunfire. The SUV's windows shattered. Sarah hauled the agent into the back seat and threw herself in after him. Reeves dove into the driver's seat, slammed it into gear, and punched the accelerator. The SUV fishtailed, tires screaming. Sarah braced herself as they rocketed toward the exit ramp. Behind them, 2 sedans peeled out in pursuit. How bad? Reeves shouted over her shoulder. Sarah was already applying pressure to the agent's wound. Entry and exit, through and through, no arterial spray. He'll live if we stop the bleeding. Use the kit under the seat. Sarah found it, ripped it open. Gauze, quick clot, pressure bandages. Her hands moved on autopilot, pack the wound, apply pressure, wrap tight. The agent grunted in pain but didn't scream. Stay with me, Sarah said. What's your name? Davis. His voice was strained. Okay, Davis, you're doing great. Keep pressure here. The SUV hit the exit ramp doing 60, barely made the turn. Reeves drove like she was trying to kill the engine, hard turns, sudden accelerations, weaving through late-night traffic. The sedans stayed on them. "They're not backing off," Reeves said. Sarah glanced back. The sedans were close, maybe 20 feet. Professional drivers. Trained. One of them pulled alongside. "Get down!" Sarah grabbed Davis and pulled him low. The window exploded inward. Bullets tore through the interior, shredding upholstery, punching through metal. Reeves jerked the wheel hard right, slamming into the sedan. Metal screamed. The sedan veered off, crashed into a parked car, and disappeared in the rear view. One down. But the second sedan was already pulling up on the other side. Reeves's radio crackled. "This is Ortega. Where are you?" "Heading west on Morrison. One vehicle in pursuit. Get to the safe house. Coordinates on your GPS." "Copy." The SUV blew through a red light. Horns blared. Sarah held Davis steady as Reeves made another hard turn, tires barely gripping asphalt. "How far?" Sarah asked. 10 minutes, if we're lucky." They weren't lucky. The second sedan pulled up, and this time the passenger leaned out with a submachine gun. Sarah saw it happening in slow motion. "Reeves!" The first burst hit the rear tire. The SUV lurched violently. Reeves fought the wheel, but physics won. They spun out, crossed 2 lanes, and slammed into a concrete barrier hard enough to deploy the airbags. Sarah's world went white. Her ears rang. Something warm trickled down her face. Then hands were grabbing her. "Out! Now!" Reeves pulling her from the wreckage. Sarah stumbled, disoriented, her vision blurred. Davis was unconscious but breathing. Reeves dragged him out, threw him over her shoulder. "Run!" They ran. The sedan screeched to a halt behind them. Doors opened. Men shouted. Reeves pulled Sarah into an alley, dark and narrow, reeking of garbage and wet concrete. They sprinted deeper, Davis bouncing on Reeves's shoulder. Sarah's lungs burned. Her head throbbed. Behind them, footsteps. Close. Reeves spotted a fire escape and practically threw Davis onto it. "Climb!" Sarah went first, moving fast despite the pain. Reeves followed, hauling Davis with her. They made it to the second-floor landing just as the first shooter entered the alley. He raised his weapon. Reeves shot him twice. He dropped. But there were more. Sarah could hear them, coordinating, flanking, moving with tactical precision. "How many?" Sarah gasped. "Too many." Reeves keyed her radio. "Ortega, we're pinned pouch down. Morrison in third. Multiple hostiles. Backup's coming. Hold position." "We can't hold anything," Reeves muttered. They kept climbing. Third floor, fourth. Sarah's legs screamed. Davis was dead weight now, completely unconscious. Reeves's breathing was labored. They reached the roof. Flat, open. Nowhere to go. Sarah spun, looking for options. Adjacent buildings, fire escapes, anything. Nothing. "We're trapped," she said. Reeves set Davis down gently, checked her magazine. Half empty. "Yeah." Sarah's mind raced. They were 5 stories up. The only access was the fire escape they'd just climbed. The shooters would be here in seconds. She looked at Reeves. "How many rounds you got?" 12. "That's not enough." "I know." Sarah grabbed a piece of rebar from a pile of construction debris near the roof access. Not a great weapon, but better than nothing. Reeves almost smiled. "You planning to fight them off with that?" "If I have to." Footsteps echoed up the fire escape. Reeves took position behind an air conditioning unit, weapon trained on the access point. Sarah crouched beside her, rebar ready, adrenaline singing through her veins. The first shooter appeared. Reeves fired. He went down. 2 more came right behind him. Reeves dropped one. The other dove for cover, returning fire. Bullets sparked off metal. Sarah kept low, waiting. The shooter moved. Sarah swung. The rebar connected with his wrist. Bone cracked. The gun clattered away. Sarah didn't hesitate. She drove the rebar into his knee, then his ribs. He went down hard. Reeves stared. "Remind me not to piss you off." "Too late!" More footsteps. They were coming in waves now. Sarah's pulse hammered. This wasn't sustainable. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. Then the sky erupted. A helicopter appeared over the adjacent building. Black, unmarked, military grade. Ropes dropped. Figures rappelled down fast and smooth. Reeves exhaled. About damn time. The tactical team hit the roof in seconds, spreading out in a defensive perimeter. One of them, a woman Sarah recognized as Captain Reeves's second-in-command, rushed over. "We've got you. Let's move." They rigged a harness for Davis, lifted him into the helicopter. Sarah went next, then Reeves. The helicopter banked hard as soon as they were aboard, pulling away from the building. Below, the shooters scattered. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold metal wall, trying to slow her heart rate. Her hands were shaking again. She looked at them, covered in Davis's blood and her own, and felt something crack inside her. How many more times could she do this? How many more times would she have to? The helicopter touched down on a different rooftop, this one belonging to a nondescript warehouse on the industrial edge of Portland. They were rushed inside, down a freight elevator, into a basement that had been converted into a secure operations center. Ortega was waiting, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past hour. "Are you hurt?" Sarah touched her forehead. Her fingers came away red. "Just a cut. Get her checked out." Ortega turned to Reeves. "How's Davis?" "Alive. Needs a hospital." "We'll get him there. Quietly." Ortega's jaw tightened. "We've got a leak. Someone on the inside. Until we find them, no one's safe." Sarah's stomach twisted. "Then how do we stop this?" "We don't." Ortega met her eyes. "We finish it." They set up in a conference room. Bare walls, single table, tactical maps spread across the surface. Catherine Marks, the prosecutor, was already there, looking grim. "The hearing's been moved up," Marks said without preamble. "Tomorrow morning, federal courthouse. You'll testify, we'll present the evidence, and the judge will issue warrants for the rest of the conspirators." Sarah blinked. "Tomorrow? They're trying to kill you before you can testify. We're not giving them the chance. That's insane. That's justice." Marks leaned forward. "You testify, we lock them down. All of them." Sarah looked at Ortega. "You said there's a leak. We'll find them. Tonight. And if you don't? Then we proceed anyway." Sarah's pulse spiked. "You're using me as bait." Marks didn't deny it. "You're the only witness who can place the drive in Hendrick's possession. The only one who can verify chain of custody. Without you, the defense tears our case apart. And if I die? Then they win." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah sat down slowly. "When do we leave?" 400 hours. We'll transport you under full security. Federal marshals, armored convoy, the works." "They got to us inside a federal building," Sarah said flatly. "What makes you think they won't get to us again?" Marks and Ortega exchanged a look. "Because this time," Ortega said, "we're ready." Sarah wanted to believe her. She didn't. That night, Sarah tried to sleep and failed. She lay on a cot in a windowless room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment since Lieutenant Hendricks had grabbed her wrist. The whispered warning, the hidden drive, the gunfire, the blood. She'd thought leaving the army meant leaving the war behind. She'd been wrong. War followed you. It got into your bones, into your muscle memory, into the way you saw the world. You could change your job, your city, your entire life, but you couldn't change what you'd become. And maybe that was okay. Maybe being a soldier didn't mean wearing a uniform. Maybe it just meant standing up when everyone else was running. At 03:30, Reeves knocked on her door. "Time to move." Sarah was already dressed. They geared her up, body armor under civilian clothes, earpiece, panic button disguised as a watch. The convoy was waiting in the warehouse loading bay. 3 armored SUVs, 12 federal marshals, enough firepower to start a small war. Marks handed Sarah a folder. "Your testimony. Review it during the drive." Sarah took it but didn't open it. "I know what I saw." "Good, because they're going to try to make you doubt it." The convoy pulled out at exactly 400. The city was still dark, streets empty except for the occasional truck making early deliveries. Sarah sat in the middle SUV, sandwiched between 2 marshals, watching the building slide past. Her mind was oddly calm. She'd been in convoys before. Iraq, Afghanistan, waiting for the IED, waiting for the ambush, waiting for the moment everything went to hell. At least here, she knew it was coming. They were 10 blocks from the courthouse when the first explosion hit. The lead SUV erupted in a fireball, flipping end over end. The convoy screeched to a halt. Sarah's driver threw it in reverse, but the third SUV was already blocking them in, trapped. "Contact front," someone shouted. Gunfire erupted from both sides, rooftops, windows, alleys. The marshals returned fire, but they were pinned down. Reeves grabbed Sarah. "We're moving on foot. Now!" They burst out of the SUV, staying low. Bullets sparked off asphalt. One of the marshals went down. Then another. Reeves pulled Sarah toward a parking structure. They made it inside, sprinting up the ramp. Behind them, the firefight raged. "How far to the courthouse?" Sarah gasped. 4 blocks. "We'll never make it." "We don't have a choice." They kept running. 3rd floor of the garage. 4th. Sarah's legs burned. Her lungs screamed. They reached the top level, open air, vehicle access on the far side. And standing between them and the exit was Marcus Toland. Not in handcuffs, not under arrest. Free. Sarah stopped dead. Toland smiled. "Miss Callahan, we finally meet." Reeves raised her weapon. "Don't move." "Or what? You'll shoot an unarmed civilian?" Toland's smile widened. "I'm here to talk." "You just killed 4 federal marshals," Reeves snarled. "I did no such thing. I've been in custody all night." He spread his hands. "I have a dozen witnesses who will testify to that." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You orchestrated this." "I orchestrated nothing. I'm simply a businessman who's been falsely accused." "You're a murderer." Toland's smile never wavered. "Prove it." Sarah took a step forward. Reeves tried to stop her, but Sarah shook her off. "I will," Sarah said quietly. "I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell them everything, and you're going to prison." Toland studied her for a long moment. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Yes." "Then you're even more naive than I thought." He gestured to the chaos below. "This is over, Ms. Callahan. You're not making it to that courthouse. Your testimony dies here." "Then you'll have to kill me yourself." Toland laughed. "I don't kill people, Ms. Callahan. I pay other people to do it for me." He stepped aside. 6 men emerged from behind parked cars, all armed, all moving with military precision. Reeves fired. One went down. Then her gun clicked empty. The men closed in. Sarah grabbed Reeves' arm. "Run!" They bolted for the exit ramp, bullets chasing them. Sarah's mind raced through options. They were outgunned, outnumbered, no backup. They hit street level and kept running. Behind them, the shooters pursued. Sarah's lungs were on fire. Her vision tunneled. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and fast, drowning out everything else. Then she saw it. The courthouse. 3 blocks ahead, police barricades, news crews, federal agents everywhere. Safety. If they could reach it. Reeves stumbled. Sarah caught her, kept them both moving. 2 blocks. The shooters were gaining. 1 block. Gunfire erupted behind them. Sarah braced for impact. It didn't come. She risked a glance back. The shooters were down. All of them. And standing over their bodies was a squad of soldiers in full tactical gear. Not federal agents, not police. Military. Real military. One of them approached, removing his helmet. Sarah's breath caught. She recognized him. Lieutenant Colonel James Garrett. She'd served under him in Afghanistan. "Callahan," he said simply. Sarah couldn't speak. Garrett gestured to the courthouse. "We've got it from here. Get inside." Sarah's throat tightened. "How?" "Later. Move." Reeves was staring at Sarah like she'd grown a second head. "You know him?" Sarah didn't answer. They ran the last block. The courthouse doors opened. Federal agents rushed out, forming a protective cordon. Sarah and Reeves were pulled inside, through security, up the stairs. The hearing room was packed. Press, lawyers, federal officials. Every seat filled. Catherine Marks met them at the door. "You made it." Sarah's legs nearly gave out. "Barely. That's all that matters." Marks straightened Sarah's jacket. "You ready?" Sarah looked at the room, at the judge's bench, at the defense table where Toland's lawyers sat, confident and smug. At the witness stand. "Yeah," Sarah said. "I'm ready." She walked to the stand. The bailiff swore her in. Sarah placed her hand on the Bible, spoke the words, and sat down. Marks approached. "Please state your name and occupation for the record." "Sarah Callahan." "Registered nurse." And were you working at Riverside General Hospital on the night of the incident? Yes. Can you describe what happened? Sarah took a breath, and then she told them everything. The dying patient, the whispered warning, hiding the drive, the fake agents, the shootout, the escape. She spoke for 40 minutes straight, her voice steady, her memory perfect. When she finished, the room was silent. Marks nodded. Thank you, Ms. Callahan. Then it was the defense's turn. Toland's lead attorney, a man named Harrison Chase, expensive suit, predator's smile, stood slowly. Ms. Callahan, he began, voice smooth, you claim you were just a nurse doing your job that night. Is that correct? Yes. And yet you single-handedly fought off trained contractors, disarmed an armed assailant, led an escape through a locked-down hospital. He paused. Does that sound like just a nurse to you? I did what I had to do. Because of your military training? Yes. Training in what exactly? Sarah met his eyes. Combat medicine, small unit tactics, close quarters combat. So you're a trained killer. Mark shot to her feet. Objection. Sustained, the judge said. Chase smiled. Let me rephrase. You've killed people before, haven't you, Ms. Callahan? Sarah's jaw tightened. In combat, yes. How many? I don't know. You don't know? Chase's eyebrows rose. You don't keep count? No. Interesting. He paced. And after you left the military, you suffered from PTSD, correct? Sarah's pulse spiked. I was treated for it, yes. Nightmares, flashbacks, violent episodes? Objection! Marks was furious now. Relevance. The judge hesitated. I'll allow it, but get to the point, Mr. Chase. Chase turned back to Sarah. Ms. Callahan, isn't it possible that what you remember from that night is unreliable? That your trauma, your training, your history of violence might have… No. Sarah cut him off. Chase blinked. Excuse me? I said no. Sarah's voice was cold. I know what I saw. I know what happened. And I know that your client ordered the deaths of Lieutenant Hendricks, Dr. Forster, and 4 federal marshals to cover up his crimes. You can't possibly… I can, because I was there. And unlike you, I don't get paid to lie. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Chase's face went red. Your Honor, I move to strike. Denied. The judge looked at Sarah. Ms. Callahan, please limit your responses to the questions asked. Sarah nodded, not breaking eye contact with Chase. He regrouped, but Sarah could see the cracks forming. He tried a dozen more angles, questioning her credibility, her motives, her mental state. She didn't budge. Finally, he gave up. No further questions. Sarah stepped down. Marks presented the evidence next. The contents of the drive, financial records, communications, everything. It took 3 hours. By the end, Toland's lawyers looked like they'd been hit by a truck. The judge called a recess. Sarah sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, exhausted, drained, running on nothing but willpower. Reeves sat beside her. You did good. I did what I had to. Still good. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ortega appeared, phone in hand, expression unreadable. We found the leak, she said. Sarah looked up. Who? Assistant Director Morrison, FBI. He's been on Toland's payroll for 6 years. Sarah's stomach dropped. What happens now? He's being arrested as we speak. Ortega paused. And there's something else. We just got word from the DOD. They're opening a full investigation into Obsidian Solutions, military contracts, black sites, all of it. How long will that take? Months. Maybe years. But it's happening. Ortega smiled, actually smiled. Because of you. Sarah didn't know what to say. Before she could respond, the bailiff appeared. Court's back in session. They filed back in. The judge entered, sat, and looked directly at Toland. Based on the evidence presented, I'm issuing arrest warrants for all named conspirators. Mr. Toland, you will be held without bail pending trial. He banged his gavel. We're adjourned. The courtroom exploded with noise. Toland sat frozen, his face a mask of shock and fury. As the marshals approached to take him into custody, He turned and looked at Sarah. His expression promised murder. Sarah stared back, unflinching. The marshals cuffed him and led him away. Sarah watched until he disappeared through the doors. Then she stood, walked out of the courtroom, and didn't look back. Outside, the press was waiting. Cameras, microphones. Questions shouted from every direction. Sarah ignored them all. She walked down the courthouse steps, Reeves at her side, and kept moving. Behind her, she could hear Marks giving a statement. Something about justice, about accountability. Sarah didn't care. She just wanted to breathe. They made it to the SUV. Reeves opened the door. Sarah was about to get in when she heard her name. "Sarah!" She turned. Lieutenant Colonel Garrett was standing at the edge of the crowd, in civilian clothes now, hands in his pockets. Sarah walked over. "What are you doing here?" "Making sure you're still alive." He studied her face. "You look like hell." "I feel like it," he smiled. "You did good work, Callahan." "I just told the truth." "That's the hardest work there is," he paused. "You could come back, you know. We could use someone like you." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I'm done fighting wars." "No, you're not." Garrett's expression was understanding. "You're just fighting them differently now." He saluted. Sarah returned it without thinking. Then he walked away. Sarah got into the SUV. Reeves started the engine. "Where to?" Reeves asked. Sarah was about to answer when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Hello?" A voice she didn't recognize, digitally distorted, spoke 3 words that made her blood run cold. "This isn't over." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, her pulse spiking. Reeves saw her expression. "What is it?" Sarah's hand was shaking. "Drive," she said quietly. "Where?" Sarah looked out the window at the city, the people, the buildings, the endless sprawl of Portland stretching out in every direction. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. Someone who wasn't done. "Just drive." The SUV cut through downtown Portland like a knife through water, silent except for the hum of the engine and the distant wail of sirens that seemed to follow Sarah everywhere now. Reeves drove without asking questions. She'd learned that about Sarah over the past few days. When she went quiet, there was a reason. And that phone call had put something dark in her eyes, something Reeves recognized from her own years in the field. The look of someone who knew the fight wasn't over. They pulled into the underground garage of the safe house. A different one this time, Ortega's orders. "Trust no one. Use nothing twice." Sarah climbed out, her body moving on autopilot, her mind replaying that digitally distorted voice. "This isn't over." 3 words, but they carried the weight of a threat that went beyond courtrooms and testimonies. Someone with resources. Someone with reach. Someone who wasn't Marcus Toland. Inside, the safe house looked like every other one. Bland furniture, reinforced windows, the smell of industrial cleaning products. Ortega was already there, hunched over a laptop, her face illuminated by the screen's harsh glow. She looked up when Sarah entered. "You got a call." Not a question. Sarah nodded. "Untraceable, I'm guessing." "We're working on it, but yeah, probably." Ortega closed the laptop. Voice modulation software, routed through multiple servers. Whoever made that call knows what they're doing. Sarah sat down heavily. "Toland's locked up. Morrison's being arrested. Who else is there?" Ortega exchanged a glance with Reeves. "That's what we need to figure out." "You think there's someone above Toland?" "I think Toland's a businessman. Ruthless, yes. But this?" Ortega gestured vaguely at everything. The attacks, the leak, the military-grade coordination. "This is beyond him. Someone else is pulling strings." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we find them." "That's not your job." "It became my job the second they tried to kill me." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm not hiding anymore. I'm done being reactive." Ortega studied her for a long moment. Then she opened the laptop again and turned it towards Sarah. On the screen was a photograph. A man in his late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, standing on the steps of the Capitol building. He looked like every other wealthy lobbyist Sarah had ever seen on the news. "Senator William Driscoll," Ortega said. "California. Armed Services Committee. He's been in Congress for 22 years. Sarah frowned. What's his connection to Obsidian? That's the problem. On paper, nothing. But we've been digging into the financial records from the drive. There are shell companies, offshore accounts, and they all lead back to a trust fund that Driscoll's wife inherited. That's not proof. No, but it's a pattern. Ortega pulled up another file. Driscoll sponsored the bill that gave Obsidian their first military contract. He pushed for expanded use of private contractors in conflict zones. And every time there was oversight, every time someone asked questions, Driscoll shut it down. Sarah's pulse quickened. He's protecting them. More than that, we think he's a partner, silent but significant. Reeves leaned against the wall, arms crossed. If Driscoll's involved, he has access to everything: intelligence briefings, military operations, federal investigations. Including ours, Sarah said quietly. Ortega nodded. He would have known about the drive, about Hendricks, about you. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle Sarah hadn't known she was solving. He ordered the hit on the hospital, Sarah said. We can't prove it. Not yet. But you believe it. Ortega's silence was answer enough. Sarah stood, pacing. Her mind was racing through implications, through the scope of what they were dealing with. A senator. Not just wealthy or connected, but embedded in the machinery of government itself. How do we bring him down? Sarah asked. Ortega hesitated. We don't. Not directly. Driscoll has immunity for anything he does as part of his legislative duties, and he's smart enough to keep his hands clean. Then what do? We build a case, slowly, carefully, and we let the Senate Ethics Committee handle it. Sarah stopped pacing. That could take years. Probably. People died. More will die if he's not stopped. I know. Ortega's voice was strained. But we have to do this right. One mistake, one procedural error, and he walks. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to scream that justice delayed was justice denied, that playing by the rules only worked when both sides followed them. But she'd been a soldier long enough to know when orders were orders. Fine, she said. What do you need from me? Right now, stay alive. Driscoll's already tried to kill you 3 times. He'll try again. Let him. Ortega's eyes widened. Excuse me? Sarah met her gaze. Use me as bait. Draw him out. Make him make a mistake. Absolutely not. Why? You just said we need him to slip up. I didn't mean by getting you killed. Ortega stood. You're not an agent, Sarah. You're a witness, and you've done enough. Sarah's jaw clenched. Clearly not, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. Before Ortega could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. What? Reeves asked. Toland's lawyers just filed for dismissal. They're claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. Sarah's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try. Ortega was already typing. Catherine Marks is fighting it, but if the judge agrees, everything we've built falls apart. When's the hearing? Tomorrow morning. Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her. They'd won in court. They'd gotten Toland arrested. And now it might all be undone by a legal technicality. There's more, Ortega said, still reading. Driscoll just released a statement. He's calling for a full investigation into alleged misconduct by federal agents involved in the Obsidian case. He's positioning himself as the one demanding accountability. He's trying to control the narrative, Reeves said. He's succeeding. Ortega looked at Sarah. Every major network is running with it. By tonight, you're going to be painted as either a hero or a vigilante, depending on which channel you watch. Sarah sat down again, suddenly exhausted. I can't win, can I? Not in the court of public opinion. Not yet. Ortega closed her phone. But public opinion isn't what matters. Evidence does, and we have it. For now. The words hung in the air. That night, Sarah watched the news coverage from the safe house. She was right. The narrative had already split into 2 camps. Half the commentators praised her as a hero, a veteran who'd stepped up when it mattered. The other half questioned her motives, her stability, her convenient presence at the center of a massive federal case. Senator Driscoll appeared on 3 different networks, his performance polished and practiced. He expressed sympathy for the victims. He called for transparency. He suggested, ever so carefully, that perhaps the federal response had been overzealous. Never once did he mention Sarah by name, but the implication was clear. She was the problem. Sarah turned off the TV. Reeves appeared in the doorway. "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." Sarah almost smiled. Reeves had that same command voice every NCO she'd ever served with had. Not asking, just stating what was going to happen. They sat at the small kitchen table. Reeves had ordered takeout, Thai food still warm. Sarah picked at her pad Thai, not really tasting it. "Can I ask you something?" Reeves said. "Yeah." "Why'd you really leave the army?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I told you I got tired of watching people die." "That's the official answer. What's the real one?" Sarah set down her fork. "There was a mission. Afghanistan. We were providing medical support for a village outreach program. Building trust, treating injuries, that kind of thing." Reeves nodded. "There was a kid," Sarah continued, "maybe 10 years old. He'd stepped on a mine, lost both legs below the knee. I stabilized him, got him to the field hospital, saved his life." "That's good." "I thought so too, until I found out his father was a Taliban commander. The mine he'd stepped on, his father had planted it, and the intel we got from treating that kid led to a raid that killed 20 people. Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless. "I saved a life, and it cost 20 more. Reeves was quiet. "After that, I couldn't reconcile it anymore," Sarah said. "The math. The calculations, save 1, kill 10. It all just blurred together. So you became a nurse." "So I tried to." Sarah looked at her hands. "Turns out you can't escape the math. It just changes form." Reeves reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's shoulder briefly. "For what it's worth, you made the right call. At the hospital, with the drive, all of it." Sarah wanted to believe that. She wasn't sure she did. The dismissal hearing the next morning was brutal. Sarah sat in the gallery, watching Toland's lawyers argue that the drive had been obtained through an illegal search, that Lieutenant Hendricks had been acting outside his authority, that the entire chain of custody was compromised. Catherine Marks fought back with everything she had, citing precedent, emergency circumstances, exigent need, but the defense had prepared well, too well. The judge called a recess to consider the arguments. Sarah followed Marks into the hallway. "Are we going to lose this?" Mark's expression was grim. "I don't know. The law's on our side, but Toland's team is good. Very good. Someone's coaching them." "Probably." Marks lowered her voice. "Driscoll has connections to half the law firms in D.C. He could have sent them the playbook himself." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Then we need to connect him publicly. Make it impossible for him to hide." "With what evidence? Everything we have is circumstantial." "Then we get more." Marks studied her. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Driscoll's smart, but he's also arrogant, and arrogant people make mistakes when they think they're winning. You want to provoke him. I want to give him enough rope to hang himself." Marks was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone. "I might have an idea, but it's risky." "Everything's risky at this point." "Fair enough." Marks made a call, spoke quietly for a minute, then hung up. "I have a contact at the Washington Post, investigative reporter. She's been following the Obsidian story." "And?" "And if you're willing to go on the record, really on the record, full interview, your name and face attached, she'll run it. Front page. Tomorrow morning." Sarah's pulse quickened. "That'll make me an even bigger target." "Yes, but it'll also force Driscoll to respond, and when he does, he might slip up." Sarah thought about it, about the phone call, the threats, the attempts on her life. They were already trying to kill her. At least this way, she'd be swinging back. "Set it up," Sarah said. The interview happened that afternoon in a hotel conference room. Neutral territory, lots of witnesses, security at every entrance. The reporter was a woman in her 40s named Allison Grant. Sharp eyes and a recording device that she placed on the table between them like a weapon. "Before we start," Grant said, "I need to be clear. Anything you say is on the record. It will be published. And once it's out there, you can't take it back." "I understand." "Good." Grant hit record. "Let's begin. Tell me about the night Lieutenant Hendricks died." Sarah did. She walked Grant through every detail. The wounds, the whispered warning, hiding the drive, the fake agents, the shootout. She talked about Toland's arrest, about the attempts on her life, about the phone call threatening her even after the hearing, and then she talked about Senator Driscoll. You believe a sitting U.S. senator is involved in this conspiracy? Grant's voice was carefully neutral. I believe the evidence points in that direction. Shell companies, offshore accounts, legislative actions that directly benefited Obsidian Solutions. Do you have proof? The FBI does. But they haven't arrested him. Not yet. Grant leaned forward. Why are you doing this interview, Ms. Callahan? You could have stayed quiet. Let the investigation run its course. Sarah met her eyes. Because people died, and someone needs to be held accountable. Not just Toland, everyone involved. Even if that puts you in danger? I've been in danger since the moment Lieutenant Hendricks grabbed my wrist. This just makes it official. Grant studied her for a long moment. You're either very brave or very reckless. Probably both. Grant almost smiled. One more question. What do you want people to know about you? Sarah hadn't expected that. What do you mean? There's a lot of speculation about who you are, what you want. Some people think you're a hero. Others think you're just someone who got lucky. What do you want the record to show? Sarah was quiet, thinking. Then she said, I want them to know I'm a nurse. That's all I ever wanted to be. But when I saw people in danger, I couldn't walk away. Maybe that makes me a soldier. Maybe it just makes me human. I don't know. But I'm not going to apologize for it. Grant nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Callahan. The interview ended. Sarah walked out knowing she'd just lit a fuse. Now all she could do was wait for the explosion. The article hit the Washington Post's website at 6 p.m. By 6:30, every major news outlet had picked it up. By 7, Senator Driscoll was in front of cameras denying everything. Sarah watched his press conference from the safe house, Ortega and Reeves flanking her. Driscoll stood on the steps of the Capitol, looking calm and composed. These allegations are completely baseless. I have dedicated my career to serving the American people and supporting our military. To suggest that I would be involved in illegal activities is not just wrong, it's offensive. A reporter shouted a question. What about the financial connections between your family trust and Obsidian Solutions? My wife's trust fund is managed by independent financial advisors. I have no direct involvement in its investments, and I have no knowledge of any connection to Obsidian Solutions. Another reporter. Will you submit to questioning by the FBI? Driscoll smiled. I have nothing to hide. If the FBI wants to speak with me, my office is always open. Ortega muted the TV. He's good. Too good, Reeves said. That was rehearsed. Of course it was. Ortega turned to Sarah. He's going to come after you now, harder than before. Good, Sarah said. Let him. But Driscoll didn't come after her, not directly. Instead, over the next 72 hours, a coordinated campaign emerged. Anonymous sources leaked information to sympathetic journalists questioning Sarah's mental health, her military record, her motivations. Old colleagues from the Army were interviewed, carefully selected ones who remembered Sarah as troubled or unstable. It wasn't a legal attack. It was a character assassination, and it was working. Public opinion began to shift. Social media filled with conspiracy theories. Podcasters dissected Sarah's every word, looking for inconsistencies. The narrative changed from hero nurse to questionable witness with an agenda. Sarah watched it happen, feeling powerless. They're burying you, Reeves said bluntly, and we can't stop it. Then we changed the game, Sarah said. Ortega looked up from her laptop. How? We give them something they can't ignore. Real evidence, not circumstantial, not financial records buried in shell companies. Something concrete. Like what? Sarah thought for a moment. Then it hit her. The leak, Morrison. He's been arrested, but he hasn't talked yet, right? He's lawyered up, not saying anything. What if we made him talk? Ortega frowned. We can't force him, and even if we could, anything obtained under coercion is inadmissible. I'm not talking about coercion. I'm talking about leverage. We don't have leverage. Yes, we do. Sarah pulled up the financial records on Ortega's laptop, scanning through them. Morrison's been on Toland's payroll, but Toland reports to someone. There has to be communication, emails, texts, something. Reeves caught on. If we can prove Morrison was taking orders from Driscoll, then we have our connection, Sarah finished. Ortega was already typing. Morrison's digital forensics came back this morning. We have his phone records, emails, everything. She pulled up a file. Most of it's encrypted, but she stopped. What? Sarah leaned in. Ortega's face had gone pale. There's a message here. Sent the night of the hospital attack. Encrypted, but we cracked it this morning. She read it aloud. Package secured, witness contained, awaiting final authorization. Sarah's blood ran cold. Who sent it? Morrison. To who? Ortega clicked. The recipient field appeared. A phone number. No name. But Reeves was already cross-referencing it. Her fingers flew across her own laptop. Then she stopped, her expression hardening. It's a burner, she said. But it pinged off a cell tower near the Capitol building, and the pattern matches. This phone has been in contact with Morrison 17 times over the past 6 months, always from D.C. Sarah's heart pounded. Can you trace it to Driscoll? Not directly, but Reeves pulled up another file. There's metadata, location stamps. And one of them, she zoomed in. One of them places this phone inside the Hart Senate office building on 3 separate occasions. Ortega leaned back. That's Driscoll's building. Sarah felt something electric run through her. It's not proof, but it's close. Close enough to get a warrant? Reeves asked. Reeves? Ortega shook her head. Not for a sitting senator. We'd need more. A direct communication, a recording, something undeniable. Sarah's mind raced. Then she remembered the phone call, the one she'd received outside the courthouse. What if we bait him? She said. Ortega frowned. What do you mean? What if I go public again, push harder, make it clear I'm not backing down, force him to respond directly? That's suicide. Or it's checkmate. Sarah met Ortega's eyes. If he reaches out to silence me, if we can record it, trace it, prove it came from him, we have him. Ortega was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, That's insane. But it could work. It could also get you killed. I'm already marked for death. At least this way it means something. Reeves looked at Ortega. It's her call. Ortega exhaled slowly. Then she nodded. Fine. But we do this my way. Full surveillance, wire, backup at every corner, and the second it goes sideways, we pull you out. Deal. They set it up over the next 24 hours. Sarah would do another interview, this time on national television, primetime, millions of viewers. She would name Driscoll directly, call him out, dare him to respond, and then they'd wait. The interview was scheduled for the following night. Major network. Live broadcast. No editing. Sarah spent the day before preparing, rehearsing with Marks and Ortega. They ran through every possible question, every angle the interviewer might take. But Sarah already knew what she was going to say. The truth. That evening, as Sarah sat in the makeup chair getting ready for the broadcast, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her pulse spiked. She showed it to Ortega, who was standing nearby. Ortega nodded. The phone was already tapped, the trace running. Sarah answered. Hello? Silence. Then, that same digitally distorted voice from before. You're making a mistake, Miss Callahan. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone who's trying to save your life. Walk away, now, while you still can. Or what? Or you'll disappear, just like Hendricks. Sarah's jaw clenched. I'm not going anywhere. Then you're a fool. The line went dead. Ortega was already checking the trace. She looked up, shaking her head. Routed through too many servers. We lost it. Sarah's heart sank. But then Reeves appeared, holding a tablet. We didn't need the trace. Look. She showed them the screen, a news alert just posted seconds ago. Senator Driscoll announces live press conference, 9 p.m. tonight, the same time as Sarah's interview. Sarah looked at Ortega. He's countering, trying to control the message before I can get mine out. Then we move up your interview, Ortega said. Go now, before he can spin it. Sarah stood. Let's do it. The interview went live at 8:45 p.m. Sarah sat across from the anchor, a veteran journalist named David Chen, in a studio that felt too bright, too exposed. But she kept her spine straight, her voice steady. Chen didn't waste time. Ms. Callahan, you've made serious allegations against Senator Driscoll. Do you stand by them? Yes? You understand the implications? Accusing a sitting senator of conspiracy and murder? I understand, and I have evidence. Chen leaned forward. What evidence? Financial records connecting Driscoll's family trust to Obsidian Solutions. Communications between the FBI mole and a burner phone traced to the Senate building, a pattern of legislative actions that directly benefited Obsidian. But no direct proof. Not yet, but it's coming. Chen studied her. Why are you doing this? You could have stayed anonymous. Let the investigation run its course. Sarah looked directly into the camera. Because Senator Driscoll thinks he's untouchable. He thinks his position protects him, and maybe legally it does. But morally, he's as guilty as Marcus Toland, and the American people deserve to know. Chen glanced at his notes. Senator Driscoll is holding a press conference right now. He's calling your allegations a politically motivated smear campaign. How do you respond? Sarah's expression didn't change. I'm not political. I'm a nurse. I don't care about parties or campaigns. I care about justice. And if you're wrong, I'm not. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Sarah answered every question, never wavering, never backing down. When it ended, she walked off the set knowing she'd just declared war. Driscoll's press conference was still running when Sarah got back to the safe house. She watched it with Ortega and Reeves, all of them silent. Driscoll stood at a podium flanked by lawyers and aides, his expression one of carefully calibrated outrage. These accusations are not just false, they are defamatory. I have served this country for over 2 decades. I have fought for our military, for our veterans, for the American people, and I will not stand by while my name is dragged through the mud by someone seeking attention. A reporter shouted a question. Driscoll ignored it. I have instructed my legal team to pursue all available remedies, including a defamation lawsuit against Ms. Callahan, and I have asked the Department of Justice to investigate whether she has committed perjury in her testimony. Sarah's stomach twisted. Driscoll continued. I understand that Ms. Callahan has suffered trauma, that she has been through terrible things, but that does not give her the right to destroy innocent lives with baseless accusations. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Ms. Callahan, if you're watching this, stop before you ruin yourself. Then he walked off the stage. The screen went dark. Sarah sat frozen. Ortega's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, her face going pale. When? She said. How many? She hung up. What? Reeves demanded. Ortega looked at Sarah. Driscoll just filed a defamation suit. $50 million. And he's petitioning the court to have you held in contempt for your testimony. Sarah's world tilted. There's more, Ortega said quietly. 3 members of Congress just co-signed a letter calling for a full investigation into your background. Military record, medical history, everything. He's burying her, Reeves said. He's trying to. Ortega's jaw tightened. But we're not done yet. Sarah stood, her legs shaking. What do we do now? Before Ortega could answer, her phone buzzed again. This time, when she looked at the screen, she smiled. We just got a break, she said. Morrison's lawyer called. He wants to make a deal. Sarah's pulse spiked. What kind of deal? Full cooperation. Names, dates, communications, everything. Ortega's eyes gleamed. He's willing to testify against Driscoll. Why? Reeves asked. What changed? Ortega showed them the screen. A news alert. Marcus Toland was found dead in his cell 20 minutes ago. Apparent suicide. Sarah's blood ran cold. That's not suicide, she said. No, Ortega agreed. It's not. And Morrison knows it. He knows if he doesn't talk, he's next. Sarah felt the pieces falling into place. Driscoll's cleaning house, she said, and he just made his first real mistake. Ortega was already typing. Morrison testifies tomorrow. We get his statement on record, we connect him to Driscoll, and we have our case. Sarah wanted to feel relief, but all she felt was the weight of what was coming. The final confrontation. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Toland's body cooling in a cell somewhere. About Morrison, terrified, knowing he was next. About Driscoll, calm and confident, believing he'd already won. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. She grabbed it, expecting another threat. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. Roof, now, alone. Sarah's pulse spiked. She should have told Ortega. Should have called Reeves. Instead, she got dressed and headed for the stairs. The roof was cold, wind cutting through her jacket. She scanned the shadows, looking for threats, her hand on the knife she'd tucked into her waistband. A figure stepped out from behind the air conditioning unit. Sarah's breath caught. It was Senator Driscoll. In person. Alone. He smiled. "Hello, Ms. Callahan." Sarah's hand tightened on the knife. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. I wanted to talk, face to face, no lawyers, no cameras. You have 10 seconds before I call the FBI. Driscoll held up his hands. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to make you an offer." Sarah didn't move. "I'm listening." "Walk away. Drop the accusations. Retract your testimony, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Financially, legally. A new identity if you want it. A fresh start. You're trying to buy me off. I'm trying to save both our lives." Driscoll's smile faded. "You think I'm the top of this? I'm not. There are people above me, people who don't negotiate. If you keep pushing, they'll kill you, and then they'll kill everyone you've ever cared about." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Then I'll take them down too." Driscoll stared at her. "You can't win this. Watch me." For a long moment, they stood in silence. Then Driscoll nodded slowly. "I gave you a chance." He turned and walked toward the roof access. Sarah called after him. "You made a mistake coming here." Driscoll paused. "What mistake?" Sarah smiled. "You admitted it, all of it, and I recorded every word." Driscoll's face went white. Sarah pulled out her phone, hit play. His voice, clear as day. "Walk away. Drop the accusations. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Driscoll lunged. Sarah was ready. She sidestepped, drove her knee into his stomach, and as he doubled over, she grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. He gasped in pain. The roof access door burst open. Ortega and Reeves appeared, weapons drawn, followed by 4 federal agents. Ortega looked at Sarah, at Driscoll on his knees, and shook her head. "You couldn't just wait for backup?" Sarah released Driscoll, stepped back. "He came to me." One of the agents cuffed Driscoll, read him his rights. Driscoll looked at Sarah, his expression pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said. Sarah met his eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." They dragged Driscoll off the roof in handcuffs, and Sarah watched until he disappeared through the stairwell door. Her hands were still shaking from the adrenaline, but her breathing was steady, controlled. Ortega approached, her expression caught somewhere between fury and admiration. "That was the stupidest thing you've ever done," she said. "Probably. You could have been killed." "But I wasn't." Sarah held up her phone. "And now we have him." Ortega took the phone, listened to the recording. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. "This is it. This is what we needed." "Will it hold up in court?" "He came to you. He initiated contact. He made threats and offered bribes." Ortega smiled grimly. "Yeah, it'll hold up." Reeves was standing at the roof's edge, scanning the surrounding buildings through night vision binoculars. "We need to move. If Driscoll came alone, I'll eat my badge. He's got people watching." "Then let's not give them a target." Ortega keyed her radio. "All units, we're relocating. Package is secure." They moved Sarah to a 3rd safe house, this one in the suburbs, anonymous and forgettable, the kind of place where no one looked twice at anyone. By dawn, the news had broken. Senator Driscoll arrested on federal charges. Sarah watched the coverage from the living room, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. Every network ran the same footage, Driscoll being led out of a federal building in handcuffs, his lawyers shouting denials, protesters and supporters clashing on the courthouse steps. The anchor's voice was solemn. "This marks an unprecedented moment in American politics. A sitting United States senator arrested and charged with conspiracy, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." The screen cut to footage of Sarah's interview, her face, her words. Then to Driscoll's press conference, his threats, his confident smile. The juxtaposition was damning. Ortega appeared in the doorway. "Morrison's testimony starts in an hour. You should see this." They set up a secure video feed. Sarah watched from the safe house as Assistant Director Morrison sat in a federal interrogation room, his lawyer beside him, 2 prosecutors across the table. Morrison looked like he'd aged 20 years. His hands trembled. His voice cracked when he spoke. I was contacted by Senator Driscoll 6 years ago, Morrison began. He needed someone inside the FBI, someone who could monitor investigations, tip him off when things got too close. One of the prosecutors leaned forward. And you agreed? He offered me money. A lot of it. Enough to pay off my debts, buy a house, set up my kids for college. Morrison's voice dropped. I told myself it was harmless, just information. But then Hendricks started digging into Obsidian and Driscoll panicked. What did he ask you to do? He wanted to know everything, Hendricks' movements, his contacts, when he was going to make his move. Morrison swallowed hard. I told him Hendricks was bringing evidence to Riverside General, that he'd hidden it with a nurse. Sarah's chest tightened. Did Senator Driscoll order the attack on the hospital? The prosecutor asked. Morrison nodded. He said it had to look random, like gang violence or a robbery, but the contractors he hired, they were professionals. They went in to retrieve the drive and eliminate witnesses. Including Ms. Callahan? Especially Ms. Callahan. She was the only one who knew where it was. The prosecutor made a note. What happened after the hospital attack failed? Morrison's hands clenched. Driscoll went ballistic. He couldn't believe one nurse had escaped with the drive. He ordered more hits, told me to leak her location, to compromise the investigation however I could. And Marcus Toland? Morrison's face went pale. Driscoll said Toland was a liability, that he'd talked to save himself, so he had him killed. Made it look like suicide. Who carried out the execution? I don't know. Driscoll has people, contractors, fixers. He never uses the same one twice. The testimony went on for 3 more hours. Names, dates, bank transfers, communications. Morrison laid it all out, piece by piece, building a case so airtight that even Driscoll's army of lawyers wouldn't be able to dismantle it. When it ended, Ortega muted the feed and turned to Sarah. It's over, she said. We have him, completely. Sarah wanted to feel relief, vindication, something. Instead, she just felt tired. What happens now? She asked. Now. The DOJ files formal charges. Driscoll goes to trial. And you testify one more time. Sarah nodded slowly. And after that? Ortega studied her. After that, you get your life back. Sarah wasn't sure she believed that. But 3 days later, the indictments came down like hammering rain. Driscoll. 3 congressmen. 5 executives from Obsidian Solutions. 12 contractors. 24 shell companies dissolved, assets frozen, bank accounts seized. The scope of it was staggering. Sarah watched the news conferences, the perp walks, the carefully worded statements from politicians scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. It felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold on television. Reeves found her in the kitchen, staring out the window at nothing. You okay? Sarah shrugged. I don't know what I am. Reeves sat down across from her. You did something most people can't. You stood up when it was easier to stay down. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You just made the hard one. Reeves paused. What are you going to do now? Sarah hadn't thought that far ahead. For weeks, her entire existence had been focused on survival, on getting to the next hearing, the next testimony, the next threat. The idea of a future beyond that felt abstract. I don't know, she admitted. You could take some time, travel, figure things out. Sarah almost laughed. With what money? I haven't worked in 2 months. The DOJ's setting up a victim compensation fund. You'd qualify. I don't want their money. Reeves smiled slightly. Then what do you want? Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. I want to go back to work, she said finally. I want to be a nurse again. Just that. Nothing else. You think they'll let you? The media's going to follow you everywhere. Then I'll deal with it. Sarah met Reeves' eyes. I didn't go through all this just to let them take my life from me. Reeves nodded, understanding. When's the trial? 6 weeks. Mark says it'll be fast. The evidence is too strong for them to drag it out. You ready? Sarah exhaled slowly. I have to be. The trial began on a gray Monday morning in late October. The federal courthouse was a fortress. Barricades, metal detectors, armed guards at every entrance. Media trucks lined the street 3 deep. Protesters waved signs. Some supporting Driscoll, claiming he was being railroaded. others demanding justice. Sarah arrived in an unmarked SUV, escorted by 4 federal marshals. They rushed her through a side entrance, away from the cameras, into a secure waiting room. Catherine Marks was already there, reviewing notes, her expression focused. "How are you feeling?" Marks asked. "Like I want this to be over." "It will be. Soon." Marks set down her papers. "Driscoll's team is going to come at you hard. They're going to try to make you look unstable, vindictive, opportunistic. Don't let them rattle you." "They won't." "Good." Marks paused. "There's something you should know. We got a last-minute witness. Someone from inside Obsidian who's willing to testify about Driscoll's direct involvement in ordering hits." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Who?" "A former contractor named Vincent Shaw. He carried out 3 jobs for Driscoll. He's cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. Will his testimony hold up?" "He has recordings, communications, everything." Marks allowed herself a small smile. "We're not just burying Driscoll. We're ensuring he never sees daylight again." The bailiff appeared in the doorway. "Court's in session." Sarah followed Marks into the courtroom. It was packed wall to wall. Journalists, federal officials, victims' families. Every seat filled, every eye turning to watch as Sarah walked down the aisle. And there, at the defense table, sat Senator William Driscoll. He looked diminished somehow. His expensive suit couldn't hide the hollow look in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped under the weight of what was coming. When Sarah passed his table, he didn't look at her. She was glad. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s named Harriet Brennan, known for her no-nonsense approach and zero tolerance for courtroom theatrics. She surveyed the room with sharp eyes, then banged her gavel. "This court is now in session. United States of America versus William Driscoll. Are both parties ready?" Mark stood. "The prosecution is ready, Your Honor." Driscoll's lead attorney, Philip Warren, rose slowly. "The defense is ready. Then let's proceed." Judge Brennan looked at Marks. "Call your first witness." "The prosecution calls Sarah Callahan." Sarah stood, walked to the witness stand, placed her hand on the Bible. The oath felt heavier this time, more final. She sat. Marks approached, her expression gentle but focused. "Please state your name and occupation for the record." "Sarah Callahan, registered nurse at Riverside General Hospital." "Ms. Callahan, can you describe for the court what happened on the night of September 14th? Sarah took a breath and began. She recounted everything. Lieutenant Hendricks stumbling into the ER with wounds too precise to be random, his whispered warning, her decision to hide the drive, the fake federal agents who stormed the hospital, guns drawn, killing Dr. Forster in cold blood, the escape through smoke and gunfire, the rooftop extraction. She spoke clearly, her voice never wavering, even when describing the worst moments. Marks let her testimony breathe, asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting Sarah tell the story in her own words. When Sarah finished, Marks nodded. "Thank you. Can you now describe your interactions with the defendant, Senator Driscoll?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "After I testified at the preliminary hearing, I received a threatening phone call. The voice was distorted, but the message was clear. Stop talking or die. And then? Senator Driscoll appeared at my safe house, on the roof, alone." Sarah looked directly at Driscoll. "He offered me money to recant my testimony. When I refused, he told me that people above him would kill me if I continued." "Did you record this conversation?" "Yes." Marks pulled out a tablet, played the recording for the courtroom. Driscoll's voice filled the space, clear despite the digital modulation he'd tried to hide behind. The offers, the threats, the admissions. When it ended, the courtroom was silent. Marks turned back to Sarah. "Ms. Callahan, in your opinion, was Senator Driscoll acting alone?" Warren shot to his feet. "Objection. Calls for speculation." "Sustained," Judge Brennan said. "Rephrase, Counselor." Marks nodded. "Ms. Callahan, did Senator Driscoll mention anyone else during your rooftop conversation?" "Yes. He said there were people above him, people who don't negotiate." "Did he name these people?" "No." Marks let that sit for a moment. No further questions. Then it was Warren's turn. He approached slowly, his smile predatory. "Ms. Callahan, you've had quite a journey, haven't you? From combat medic to hospital nurse to..." What would you call yourself now? A professional witness? Sarah's expression didn't change. I'm a nurse who testified about what she saw. A nurse with PTSD. A nurse who admitted to violent episodes. A nurse who, by her own admission, has killed people. In combat, yes. And after you left the military, you struggled, didn't you? Bounced from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. Sarah's jaw clenched. I was a travel nurse. That's the nature of the work. Or is it that you couldn't hold down a position, that your trauma made you unreliable? Mark stood. Objection. Badgering. Sustained. Mr. Warren, ask questions, don't editorialize. Warren smiled thinly. Ms. Callahan, isn't it true that you've profited from this situation? Book deals, movie rights? No. No? You haven't been approached by publishers? I've been approached. I declined. Warren's eyebrows rose. Why? Because this isn't a story. It's people's lives. Warren paused, recalibrating. Let's talk about the night at the hospital. You claim you hid a USB drive, but there were no witnesses to this action, correct? Correct. So we only have your word that you didn't tamper with it, that you didn't add or delete files. Sarah's voice went cold. I was trying to survive. I didn't have time to hack into classified files. But you had time to disarm a trained contractor, to fight your way through a locked hospital, to orchestrate an escape that most Special Forces soldiers couldn't pull off. I did what I was trained to do. Exactly. Warren turned to the jury. You were trained to be violent, to kill, and when chaos erupted, you reverted to that training. Sarah leaned forward. I reverted to saving lives, which is also what I was trained to do. Warren's smile faded. You expect this court to believe you're just an innocent bystander who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I expect this court to look at the evidence, the drive, Morrison's testimony, the recording of your client threatening me. Sarah's voice hardened. I expect this court to do what Senator Driscoll thought it wouldn't, hold him accountable. Warren's face flushed. Your Honor, move on, Mr. Warren, Judge Brennan said. Warren tried a dozen more angles, questioning Sarah's timeline, suggesting she'd colluded with federal agents to frame Driscoll, implying she was mentally unstable. Sarah didn't budge. Finally, Warren gave up. No further questions. Sarah stepped down. As she walked past the defense table, Driscoll leaned over and whispered, barely audible, This isn't over. Sarah stopped, looked at him. Yes, she said clearly, loud enough for the jury to hear. It is. Judge Brennan's gavel came down. Order. Sarah returned to her seat. The prosecution called Morrison next, then Vincent Shaw, the contractor, who detailed 3 separate hits he'd carried out on Driscoll's orders. Then financial experts who walked the jury through the money trail. Then military officials who testified about Obsidian's illegal operations. The evidence piled up, layer after layer, until there was no air left in the room for doubt. The defense tried. They called character witnesses, senators, businessmen, constituents who swore Driscoll was a patriot. They brought in experts who questioned the financial analysis. They suggested the recordings were doctored, but it was like trying to bail out the Titanic with a teaspoon. The trial lasted 4 weeks. On a Friday afternoon in late November, the jury returned their verdict after only 6 hours of deliberation. The courtroom was packed. Sarah sat in the front row, flanked by Ortega and Reeves, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Judge Brennan addressed the jury. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of racketeering? Guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice? Guilty. The foreman read through all 17 charges. Guilty. 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 By the end, Driscoll was slumped in his chair, his face ashen. His lawyers sat motionless, defeated. Judge Brennan banged her gavel. The defendant is remanded into custody pending sentencing. This court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Sarah sat frozen, the word echoing in her head. Guilty. It was over, really over. Ortega squeezed her shoulder. You did it. Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded, feeling something crack open inside her chest. Relief and grief and exhaustion all tangled together. Outside, the media frenzy was overwhelming. Sarah gave a brief statement on the courthouse steps, her voice steady despite the chaos. Justice was served today, not because of me, because of Lieutenant Marcus Hendricks, who gave his life trying to expose the truth. Because of the federal agents and prosecutors who fought to bring these criminals to justice. Because of a system that, despite its flaws, still works when people refuse to look away. A reporter shouted, "What's next for you?" Sarah looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at the city beyond. "I'm going back to work," she said simply. "I'm going to be a nurse. That's all I ever wanted." She walked down the steps and didn't look back. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Sarah didn't attend. She watched it on television from her apartment, a small one-bedroom in southeast Portland that she'd rented with her first paycheck back at Riverside General. Judge Brennan's voice was firm and unforgiving. "Mr. Driscoll, you betrayed the public trust in the most egregious way possible. You used your position to enrich yourself and protect criminals. You ordered the deaths of innocent people. You attempted to silence witnesses and obstruct justice at every turn." Driscoll stood, his expensive lawyers flanking him, but there was nothing they could do. "I sentence you to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. In addition, you are hereby stripped of your pension and all benefits accrued during your time in office." The gavel came down. Sarah turned off the television. It was done. She sat in the quiet of her apartment, feeling the weight of the past months finally lift from her shoulders. Her phone buzzed, a text from Kelly. "Shift starts in an hour. Don't be late." Sarah smiled despite herself. She changed into her scrubs, grabbed her badge, and headed out into the cold December evening. The Riverside General ER looked different now. Or maybe Sarah was the one who'd changed. She walked through the doors, past the triage desk where Kelly was already fielding calls, past the bays where patients waited, past the supply room where she'd once hidden a drive that would bring down a senator. Everything was the same. Everything was different. "Callahan," Kelly called. "Bay 4 needs vitals." Sarah grabbed her equipment and headed over. The patient was a middle-aged man with chest pain. She took his blood pressure, checked his oxygen levels, asked about his symptoms. Routine, normal, exactly what she needed. The shift blurred together. A broken arm, a diabetic emergency, a car accident victim with internal bleeding. Sarah moved through it all with practiced efficiency, her hands steady, her mind focused. Around midnight, during a rare quiet moment, she stepped outside for air. The city stretched out before her, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives, fighting their own battles, making their own choices. And Sarah had learned something through all of this. You didn't need permission to do what was right. You didn't need a title or authority or recognition. You just needed to decide that some things mattered more than safety, more than comfort, more than being liked or fitting in or keeping your head down. She'd been invisible for so long, she'd forgotten that invisibility could be a choice. Now she knew better. Kelly appeared beside her. "You doing okay?" Sarah nodded. "Yeah, I am." "Good." Kelly hesitated. "I wanted to say, you've changed things around here. People see nurses differently now. They listen. They should have been listening all along." "I know, but they weren't, and now they are." Kelly paused. "Because of you." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Before she could respond, the ER doors burst open. A trauma case, gunshot wound, critical. They rushed back inside. Sarah grabbed the trauma kit, her training taking over. She moved with the team, calling out vitals, starting lines, coordinating care. The patient was young, maybe 25. His eyes were wide with fear and pain. "Am I going to die?" he gasped. Sarah looked at him, saw herself reflected back. That same fear, that same desperation. "Not if I can help it," she said. She worked. Hours later, when the patient was stabilized and on his way to surgery, Sarah allowed herself a moment to breathe. She'd saved a life tonight. No cameras, no press conferences, no recognition. Just a patient who'd lived to see tomorrow because someone had refused to give up on him. That was worth more than any verdict. The shift ended at dawn. Sarah walked out into the early morning light, exhausted but satisfied. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ortega. "Heard you're back at work. Proud of you. Also, DOD wants to set up that meeting. Task Force for Whistleblower Protection. They need someone who understands what it's really like. Interested? Sarah stared at the message. A year ago, she would have run from anything that pulled her back into that world of investigations and testimony and endless bureaucracy. But she wasn't running anymore. She typed back, "Send me the details." Because she'd learned something else through all of this. Change didn't happen in courtrooms alone. It happened in hospitals and offices and conference rooms where people made decisions about protocols and protections and who got heard and who got silenced. It happened when someone who'd lived through it stood up and said, "This is how it really works, and this is how we fix it." Sarah could do that. She would do that. But not today. Today she was going home to sleep, to rest, to remember what normal felt like. Tomorrow she'd change the world. One shift at a time. Sarah drove through the quiet city streets as the sun rose, painting everything gold and orange. The radio played softly, some jazz station, instrumental, peaceful. She thought about Hendrix, about his final words. Hide it. She'd done more than that. She'd made sure it mattered. At a stoplight, Sarah caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked tired, older than her 34 years. But there was something else there too. Peace. The kind that came from knowing you'd done everything you could, that you'd stood when it mattered, that you'd refused to be silenced or intimidated or broken. The light turned green. Sarah drove forward, leaving the past behind, carrying only the lessons into whatever came next. Because in the end, that's what defined you. Not the battles you fought, but the ones you won by refusing to quit. And Sarah Callahan had won the one that mattered most, the battle for her own voice, her own truth, her own right to be heard. No one would make her invisible again, not because she was loud or famous or powerful, but because she'd learned that the quietest strength was often the strongest, the kind that didn't need recognition to exist, the kind that just kept showing up, doing the work, making a difference one small act at a time. Sarah pulled into her apartment complex, parked, and sat for a moment in the silence. Then she got out, locked the car, and walked inside. Tomorrow she'd go back to Riverside General. She'd check vitals and start IVs and comfort scared patients. She'd be a nurse. Just that. Nothing more, nothing less. And that would be enough. Because she'd finally learned what she'd been searching for all along. You didn't need rank to act. You didn't need permission to matter. You just needed the courage not to look away. And Sarah Callahan would never look away again.